Hey guys, it's me. My lesson plan I'm going to be talking about tonight is a language arts lesson plan, and I developed it for middle school age. And so it kind of explains right here. So the setting of the classroom I'll be doing is middle school, so grades 6 through 8. Students of EBD or LD diagnosis is kind of the area I was looking at. I am going to apologize ahead of time. There's a good chance my cat will walk in front of my screen, so if that happens, I apologize. So some barriers that are possible with this lesson plan is the students of these population can be easily distracted by each other. They can get off topic really easily. Some days, for whatever reason, some of them might not feel very motivated to work. Things like that, things that I think we all know are pretty typical for a student specifically of EBD or LD. Um, and I also think to avoid some of these problems, it's important to form lessons in areas that, sorry, my cat's bothering me. It's important to form lessons in areas that students show interest in. So by doing language arts, by doing like a reading segment, I think it's important to pick books that our students would find interesting. There he is. And so for my book, I am choosing The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien because um, it's one of my favorite books, and it fits a lot of our students. I think like the adventure type thing. They're into video games. They're into that type of style, and it's an easier read um, than the rest of the Tolkien books. Sorry, there's a lot of distractions going on. Um, and so my learning targets for this specific lesson is students will be able to read a passage from a book, so The Hobbit, and pick out metaphors used in that said text and define the meaning behind them. And then the other one is students will be able to formulate metaphors of their own when independently writing in their journals. So in this classroom, like the language arts classroom, every day, kind of to start the class, the kids would do some independent journal time. And then to end the class, they would do independent journal time reflecting on what they had learned about. So again, going over kind of like we would be going through a book. I picked The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I think it fits the reading level of the students that would be in this classroom while also challenging them in some areas. And it closely meets the interests of the students. Like I said, a lot of our students don't want to read some really old book about a topic that they're not interested in. So by giving them like a fantasy book that has a lot of action and adventure in it, I think could pique their interest and get them interested in reading. Yeah, and like I said, it's good material full of different literary styles. So The Hobbit has lots of metaphors, has lots of imagery. So it's a good book and example for this type of lesson. And so here we go. So the lesson procedure that I would do of this class, let me fix that spelling error. So I would start the class by just having a big, large group discussion about metaphors and how we all use them. I would say that in this population, a student, they use metaphors a lot. I think we all do, but I think they don't realize what they are or like how to recognize them or what they're called. So just explaining first what a metaphor is. It's kind of like saying my cat is as big as a tiger, but instead of saying like as a tiger, I would just say my cat is a tiger because he's huge. So like that's a metaphor. Todd is a tiger. And so we have that large group discussion, and then I explain the importance of being. I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. I explain the importance of being able to use metaphors and different writing styles. So for journaling, for authors to be a good writer, you need to be able to master and learn different writing styles, such as using metaphors in your text or using alliteration or just anything, just kind of to add variety and imagery. And it makes for a better book. And people who read those books typically like those books more than books that don't have a lot of different writing styles in them. So after we do our big, large group discussion, then we break into like small groups of two or three for their Hobbit reading. So let's say like they're reading a chapter around their group, and as they read their chapter, they're going to recognize the metaphors that are used while they're reading, and then the group will write them down while they're doing that. So like if they see something that says like uh, I don't know, Bilbo was an ant compared to Gandalf, meaning he's really really small compared to Gandalf. So like that's a metaphor. So they're going to recognize those metaphors. They're going to write them down, and they do that throughout their lesson. And then when their reading is done, they look at all their metaphors and they're going to determine the meaning for all of them. And they're going to be encouraged to, know that they're not going to get all of them right. Like if there's one they're really confused about, then that's okay. Like because we're going to discuss it as a class afterwards. And then during this group time, like the teacher and the pairs that would be in the classroom are kind of just scanning around the room, making sure all the groups are on task and all the groups, are doing the right lesson. And if they have questions, to be available for questions, that type of thing. So after the groups are done, we meet again as a big class and we go over the findings. We go over and compare each group's different metaphors they found, what they thought their meanings were. If one group had a question about what one of their meanings would be, maybe another group would have a good idea of what it would be. And so kind of like that. And then, so we go over their findings and we go over like exactly how many metaphors you found just in one chapter of a book. And I think they'd be really surprised to find how many metaphors they found and show like how easy it can be to use a metaphor in their own writing and just how much more interesting it can be as a reader to read a book that has metaphors in it instead of being super literal all the time. So then to end the class, the students will have them write in their journals about like what they're gonna do tonight or what their plans are when they get back home, and then they're encouraged to write and use metaphors in their journals tonight to practice writing with metaphors. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And um, if writing metaphors is too tough, they can write similes instead to start, which is saying like my cat is like a tiger. That's a simile. So you're just comparing it to something that's kind of an exaggeration. Um, so just writing their journals, and then at the end of the class, what happens is they turn in all their journals, and that's kind of like the assessment for me as the teacher. And so I would look over all the kids' journals and see how they did, and then not only am I checking for if they use the metaphors and if they grasp what a metaphor is and how to apply it, but also I'm checking on other things that a language arts teacher would check on. So their coherency of their journal, spelling, word choice, all those different things. So even though I'm focusing on a specific lesson of metaphors or similes, like you can still check all these different things through this assessment of having them journal at the beginning and at the end of class. And then as a teacher, I like having one-on-one like meetings, like once a week with each student and about their journals, and that way you can go over like what they wrote about. If you notice they're misspelling a word wrong, like you can point that out. And then it's important to make sure you have the one-on-one meeting with all the students, because that way it isn't like you're singling one of them out. Like everyone has a meeting, and the meetings aren't about just negatives. Like you go over ways that they can improve their writing style and you give them pointers, but also in each meeting I would want to point out something they're doing really well with their journals and with their writing. So yeah, so that's my lesson. Like I said, it's for like middle school EBD. So kids that cognitively are pretty on level with grade level, but just have some behavior issues. So trying to give them something that they would be interested in and find interesting. All right, thanks guys.